right, hey everyone. Just going to do a quick overview of the judicial branch. We did a reading on this already, so it should be more of a review, less of new material being introduced. But going into the quiz, I did want to take a second and just kind of go over all of that information. So let's just dive right in. All right, first up, we're going to talk about the structure of Georgia's judicial branch. Now I like to use triangles for most of this because it really does kind of graphically depict how everything is organized. Up here at the top of the triangle, you have the Georgia Supreme Court. Okay, and it's the highest court in the state. It's a jurisdiction. So jurisdiction is a word that basically means their area of responsibility, the thing that they do. Their Supreme Court jurisdiction is called appellate, meaning that they hear appeals. Okay. But before we dive into each individual court and what that red line means in the middle, let's just talk in general about the judicial branch. The judicial branch has really two important functions: to interpret the laws of Georgia, figure out what they mean, because I'll be honest, it's not always clear exactly what lawmakers intended based entirely on, the words in the law. And that job, the job of determining what the laws mean, that's largely done by these top two courts up here, the Georgia Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. The second thing that the judicial branch is responsible for is administering justice in our legal system. So while at the same time protecting the rights of individuals. So basically, this is your trials. This is your lawsuits. That is one of the core responsibilities of the lower courts. These courts down here below the red line in our judicial branch. Okay, as I've already hinted, there are two types of courts. There are appellate courts and there are trial courts. So again, appellate courts, that is the Georgia Supreme Court up here, as well as the Court of Appeals. All right, we would say they're appellate courts because they have appellate jurisdiction. On the Supreme Court, we've got 9 justices. They are chosen by election and they serve 6-year terms. For the Court of Appeals, the only difference between the Court of Appeals and the Georgia Supreme Court is the number of justices. The justices on the Court of Appeals, justices is another word for judges. The judges on the Court of Appeals are chosen by election and they are elected to 6-year terms. Now, the other type of court, these are trial courts, and I've put them down here in this triangle below the red line. They are the ones that are responsible for administering justice in our legal system while protecting the rights of individuals. Now, we'll dive into like criminal versus civil cases and stuff here next week. But the courts below the red line, they combined have both criminal and civil jurisdiction. Okay, criminal is like your Law and Order type stuff where there's like somebody accused of committing a crime. Civil cases, those are like lawsuits. You get hurt in an accident and you sue the person responsible. We have a bunch of different courts for handling those different types of cases. So down here you got state court, probate court, juvenile court, magistrate court, but they all are considered to be trial courts. Okay, meaning they determine guilt or innocence or who is responsible. Next up, Supreme Court's roles in our system of checks and balances. So last unit, we already talked about how, the legislative branch, their responsibility is to create the laws. The executive branch, its responsibility is to execute the laws. In our system of checks and balances, the judicial branch has a special power called judicial review. And the judicial review is the power of the court to declare laws unconstitutional, to look at the laws that the legislature created and that the executive branch is enforcing and say, like, look, this violates a fundamental premise or a promise of our Constitution. Now, one thing that is unique to Georgia is that the Georgia Supreme Court will also automatically review all death penalty cases, okay? Because, like I said in another video, you can't really take it back, all right, next up. How do you become a judge on one of these higher level courts? So the Georgia Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals. These judges are chosen in statewide. So, every person in Georgia votes for the judges on the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. Nonpartisan. That means that it's not like Republican so-and-so running for Supreme Court, or Democratic so-and-so running for Supreme Court. They don't really put that information out there. Now, whether in their hearts they are a Republican or a Democrat, like, I don't know. They don't usually disclose that or tell people that information. Okay? The Court of Appeals, like we've already talked about, it has 15 judges. The Supreme Court has fewer, with 9. Now, this is important in Georgia. If a judge on either court dies, resigns, or is impeached, meaning removed, the governor is the one in charge of replacing that judge. Okay? And in fact, in Georgia, usually this is how most judges are originally getting onto the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. Usually a judge, if they're going to retire, they don't wait until the next election and then drop out. Usually what they're going to do is, retire a year or two out and allow the governor to pick who the replacement is going to be. All right, last important role that you need to know is the role of the Chief Justice. All right, so this is the top judge in the state of Georgia. This person is selected from amongst the members of the Supreme Court, so they decide for themselves who is going to be the Chief Justice of Georgia's judicial branch. So the head honcho in charge. A way to think of them is kind of like the governor. You know, the governor is for the executive branch. The Chief Justice is for the judicial branch. All right. That about covers it. Now, I've got a graphic organizer. If we were in class, that I would go ahead and make you do, but today I went ahead and filled it in. You've really got 2 columns here, the Court of Appeals and the Georgia Supreme Court, and you'll see that for a lot of stuff it crosses over between them. They have it in common. So the types of cases they hear are the same. They hear appeals cases. All right. Role in our system of checks and balances. Both courts have the power of judicial review. They can declare laws unconstitutional. Number of justices, this is where things get different. The Court of Appeals has 15, whereas the Supreme Court has 9. What's their role? To ensure justice has been fairly applied and to protect the rights of individuals. So again, they look at cases to make sure that the court applied the rights of the accused properly in some cases, okay? How are they chosen? For both the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, they are chosen in statewide nonpartisan elections. When they are elected, they are elected to 6-year terms. The leader for the judicial branch is called the Chief Justice. And the one thing that's really unique and special about the Georgia Supreme Court is they're constitutionally obligated to review all death penalties. Let's see. That about wraps it up. If you got any questions, please let me know. Just to let you know that you will be taking a quiz today. It is an e-class, so you're going to need to navigate over there and take the quiz as soon as you're done watching the video. I will be putting the grades in the grade book within 24 hours and emailing out progress reports. So if you don't do it, it's going to get an NTI and your parents are going to get about it. All right, guys. Again, let me know if you got any questions. Good luck.